Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Hello everyone, welcome to Road to Cheltenham. We've got lots to talk about this week because it's been a packed week of action. So we'll be updating you on the Novice Chasers and the Novice Hurdlers. We'll also be looking at the Ryanair through the prism of the Silviniaco Conte, and at long last, to the man on my left's schedule, we are talking about the juveniles in some detail. You said January, and by goodness, it is January that we talk about them.
I'd have left it till February. I'd prefer to put in the Mayor's Novice Hurdlers, but look, you got your way and we're talking about juveniles. You
said January, I just took you at your word.
Yeah, there's still a couple of weeks left in January.
This time next week, we might not be in the same happy position of having so much to talk about, because at the time of recording, it's so frosty and wintry. We're really pinning our hopes mainly probably on Sunday.
Thurles on Sunday, obviously Linkfield as well, some good racing there, but yeah, look, who knows what will happen. The forecast is to change Friday night. It's just how much it changes, and we'll see what happens on Saturday. And
how low it goes. The frost covers can't even protect if it goes below a certain temperature.
Yeah, it was pretty cold this morning, wasn't it?
It very much was, but there's always plenty to talk about. We haven't even talked about the bumpers, for example, or the Mayor's Novice Hurdlers, so there's still loads to focus upon. But let's start by picking up on the news that we told you about last week, and that is the Constitution Hill will not run in the Unibet International Hurdle. Nicky Henderson put out a statement on Monday. That was on X from his Seven Barrows Twitter account, and we can have a look at it. This is what we had to say, and it seemed to have indicated or implied a change of heart. I mean, beforehand, Nicky Henderson was laying out the ground to make a strategic decision not to run in the Boodles, saying it was not in the interest of best preparation for the Champion Hurdle. Now that seems to be academic, and that he's got a medical exemption, as it were.
Yeah, his hand was forced, but a routine or a scope, 30 scope, I wouldn't be overly worried about it. Yeah, he doesn't run in the Buda, but I wouldn't be worried about how a horse was scoping in January to what it's going to do in March.
No, of course not. But it means that we don't get to see him in the International or the Bula Hurdle. And of course, we're still waiting on that performance to definitively put him maybe at the top of the tree in terms of hurdling greatness. This is where Timeform currently have him. Just a reminder, because we've been talking about this for a couple of seasons now. He is on 177. Provisionally, and he achieved that in the 2022 Supreme, and Nightner still tops the table. And we're talking about this because that's the level of ability that we think Constitution Hill has. And Nightner, though, ran 64 times, Monksfield 49 times. Limestone Lad was the one that helped Isterbrack finally achieve that big figure, and Isterbrack ran 29 times, and Persian War ran 51 times. It was a different era, clearly, but it's that kind of competition that enables you to record a figure of substance or a performance of substance, which means that you are unquestionably remembered in history. Yeah, but it's maths that allows you to record those figures. So you have to beat a horse impressively that's rated quite highly to get a bigger figure. You can't just get it off your eye, but there are different times. Now, I don't remember Persian War, Night Nurse. I put that in for your dad, you know that, don't you? Yeah, I know any of those, but even that generation, the number of horses, the number of times they ran compared to even Isterbrack, who ran a lot. Like, obviously lots of things have changed, including training methods, and I'd say with what Martin Pipe did and how the level of fitness he brought horses to, it makes it harder for horses to recover. I don't think you'll ever again, I don't think horses will even last Persian War and those horses the way things are now. That's only my assumption. I don't know. I suspect that's true. What way they trained them in the 70s, 60s, whatever generation that was. But look, it is what it is, and I'd prefer to talk about the ones that are running. Well, we are going to. I'd have preferred him, you know, what I'm suggesting is that he needs competition. You know, he needs Stateman to turn up and give a big performance in the Champion Hurdle, or else he needs to go over to Ireland for the Matheson or the Irish Champion Hurdle in future seasons. He's in his prime at the moment. Yeah, but you're judging him off what number he achieves. I'm not just that. Yeah, to me it'll have to be what he can do over a number of seasons and the amount of runs he puts in and performances you see him, that you go, there's the bank of proof, as in actual seen him, compared to he achieved a number that 4 people sitting in an office decided. Yes, but I also feel that that has more substance to a string of ones next to your name. Generally, a string of ones next to your name suggests a paucity of ambition rather than actual dominance. Yeah, it could be. But
look, he is the dominant hurdler, but to me, to be considered even in the same breath as Istabrack, for the amount of racing he's going to do, he'll have to win 4 champion hurdles.
OK, let's talk about the horses that are actually running, shall we? And we'll start with the novice chasers. And first of all, let's check in with the Cheltenham Festival Chase entries, shall we? Because they came up this week. And it's a bit better. The Arkle is the lowest entry in its history. The Turners is up 1. The National Hunt Chase is the joint lowest. Sorry, Arkle is joint lowest and the National Hunt Chase the lowest. And the Brown Advisory is the one that has made some recovery. There are 130 entries overall, but just 92 individual horses, 31 doubly entered, 7 triply entered, and 6 of those are trained by Willie Mullins. And I've just highlighted on the right-hand side, and the Racing Post did this early in the week as well, how many of the Irish horses that are entered are actually trained by Willie Mullins. It just goes to show the power base that is there. Yeah,
Willie's not afraid to put horses in, though. And he's not overly keen on running novices and handicaps, so lots of them would just be entered in what are novice races, so that's traditionally what he does. That's
a good point. Other trainers might well be moving their horses towards handicaps, their novices, and so hence Willie Mullins might be over-blessed in this particularly
category. He doesn't generally go. I know Dino Blue as a novice ran in the Grand Annual last year, but
State Man, I suppose, did as well.
Novice hurdler, yeah, St. Roy, but in general, he keeps novices into novice company, really.
And keeps his options open. We know that. We talk about it every year with, 6 of those 7 horses that are triply entered are trained by him.
Yeah. I was surprised that they weren't all trained by him.
Yeah, Firm Footings is the one that isn't trained by Gordon Elliott. I should also mention that Flooring Porter, who's in the National Hunt Chase, is also in the Stayers Hurdle, and Shambally Kid, trained by Willie Mullins, who's in the Turners and the Brown Advisory, is also in the Stayers Hurdle. Now, whenever the entries for Cheltenham come out, there's always one where you go, hello. This time it was Oroko.
Yeah, surprised. Thought he was out for the season, but look, and even listening to the statement yesterday from Oliver Greenall, he's hopeful more than confident that he'd have him ready for Cheltenham. But look, he's a good winner for Martin Pipe. I thought he was really impressive at Warwick. And if he makes Cheltenham, great. If he doesn't, he'd be kind of hoping he would definitely make entry. And maybe he'd go entry and Punchestown at that stage, so who knows. But look, it's great to have him back, and he'd be a nice horse to have at Cheltenham.
This is the quote that Ruby was referring to, that we here at the Road to Cheltenham team got from Oliver Greenall. The horse had been over to Ireland when it was thought that the foot injury would count him out for the season. But as you can see there, it is going to be a race against time to get him to Cheltenham, and it will be for the Turners or the Arkle, not for a handicap, according to Oliver.
But right. I just to pick up on that, like, he's had 1 run over fences. Regardless of whether he has a mark or not, he shouldn't be let run a handicap. How can he's not for a handicap. I don't even know if you can run a handicap at Cheltenham with only 1 run. Can you?
I thought it was hurdles that was
hurdles is caps, but even as chasers, to me, like, how can a handicapper be expected to put a mark on Oroko? Ridiculous. You shouldn't be allowed to run a handicap.
We do have a different system, don't we? When we take our hurdles mark, and
it doesn't work.
I don't think it works either.
Yeah, exactly.
A horse whose name wasn't there is Spillane's Tower, and he was an impressive winner of a Grade 3 at Punchestown on Sunday, beating Blood Destiny, but Jimmy Mangan, his trainer, has not entered him at this stage at all at the Cheltenham Festival. I think it would be fair to say, if we have a look at Jimmy Mangan's British record, that racing in Britain is not his priority. I mean, he regularly sends out winners over his long career in Ireland. He's won the Grade 1 Powers Gold Cup with Conor Castle back in 2008. Obviously, he's best known for Monty's Pass, and so many of those runs at Aintree are to do with Monty's Pass's great exploits there. But Jimmy Mangan has a different philosophy, doesn't he? He was explaining this on the Nick Luck Daily podcast earlier in the week. You know, he's not particularly fussed about getting a novice to Cheltenham. He wants to get experience into that horse. He thinks that he can be well rewarded by staying in Ireland in the short term. Yeah, he's looking at the big picture and long term, I suppose. And when you look at it the way Jimmy sees it, you couldn't disagree with him. I mean, you're looking at Spillane's Tower, you're thinking, oh, maybe could he be one for the Galway Plate? Monty's Pass went there. And long term, would he have the stamina for a Grand National? I don't know, but he will develop over time into a really good horse. Fire something valuable at Punchestown, maybe? Could, novice handicap there. Maybe he'll go to the Willow Arm, which used to be the Power Gold Cup at Fairyhouse. But look, he's a good horse. We'll have a look at him in a minute. And Jimmy's going to allow him to mature and progress
sort of the old-fashioned way, but it's something I can see my father doing too.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, very much so. Very similar and very likeable as well. While we're on the JP McManus theme, because obviously he is the owner of Oroko and of Spillane Tower, he also is of Corbett's Cross, and that is his only entry in the National Hunt Chase. Is that a hint? Should we take it?
He was probably the one that was qualified, isn't he? He is qualified after his run at Christmas. Take it as a hint. Yeah, I suppose I would, yeah.
His deliberate jumping would suggest that that would be better.
Ponderous, hasn't he?
Yeah.
At times, a bit high, a bit clean. But yeah, I still think he's a very good horse.
He's one of 3 in the Brown Advisory for JP. Does that lead you to think that Factor File might be JP's Brown Advisory horse? Well,
Factor File wouldn't have been qualified. He's probably going to the DRF, which would be his 3rd run, but still wouldn't have him qualified for the National Hunt Chase. So,
but for the Brown Advisory I'm talking about.
Brown Advisory, maybe, but if he goes and bolts in at the DRF, would he go Turners? It's William Mullins you're talking about, like. Every option is open. I'm surprised the Factor File's not in the Arca.
Actually, so was I.
Yeah, I was.
To tell the truth, so was I. Let's have a look at the qualification requirements for the National Hunt Chase. This is just a reminder. So you need to have finished 1st, 2nd or 3rd in a chase over at least 2 miles, 7.5 furlongs at some point and started in 2 or more chases, one of which must be this season. And you've got to get those qualifications in the bag by the 48-hour confirmation stage. Let's have a look at the horses that are yet to qualify. There's some significant ones, according to the betting, and those are the reasons why they are not yet qualified. I mean, the really significant one would be Embassy Gardens, for example, but also Nick Rocket.
Yeah, but they could both go to an ace in a fortnight's time or the 10 up during the middle of February. So, yeah, I wouldn't be overly concerned. Yeah, by the end of middle of February, if you weren't qualified, you'd be thinking, well, where am I going to get a qualification? But at this stage, I wouldn't be overly worried. Yeah,
it's just a reminder for people who are maybe inclined to bet anti-post without the non-minute
Then you get
guarantee.
something like Nick Rocket, so if he tips up, he's completed, you know, you are rolling the dice a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So just to flag that, and we'll keep an eye on it during the next few weeks. The other thing that caught my eye, Il est Français.
Yeah.
The Cortez Star winner, he's in the Turners.
Yeah, he'd be some sight, wouldn't he?
That's the right race if they're going to go for anything at the Novices, isn't it?
I wouldn't have mind riding him in the Turners.
It is the Turners.
I thought it was in the Otters.
No, he's in the Turners.
Turners, yeah, definitely. I thought it was Brown Advisory. I was thinking even at Kempton, I wouldn't mind going back and tripping him. He'd take some following in the Arkle too.
He's a bit Galopin de Champs, don't you think? Because, I mean, he hit the line really hard in the Cortez Star. I don't doubt that he's going to stay 3 miles, but he's got that exuberance that Galopin de Champs had as well.
He has. He's only 5 as well. Do you really need to be going that distance? I'd be going the middle trip and even shorter if you had to.
This is all probably academic, though, because Noel George and Amanda Zetterholm are talking about sticking to the plan, which is Auteuil in April and then the Grand Steep de Paris in May. And
I think most Grand Steep de Paris winners have had a prep in May, in April in Auteuil. Don't think there's been one, probably since Manzer that hasn't had a prep. Maybe he had a prep, which is the Gold Cup, I think.
Okay. Anything else amongst the novice chasers you want to mention?
No, I just think there'll be another couple of weeks before you'll be nailing your colours to any mast in a novice chase, other than Marine National.
Well, yes, he's only in the Arkle and he's looking good for it. So we've been nattering away about the novices in the medium to long term. Let's talk about what's happened more recently, shall we? Because there were some significant races. We flagged them last week that were run over the weekend. We go to Warwick first, and this is the Hampton Novices Chase over 3 miles, and it was won by Grey Dawning. They went hard, didn't they?
They did go really good gallop. Appleway booked out and left and shot, and down the inside you had Broadway Boy. The Changing Man is in the black colours. Carbon King dropped in, and the grey is obviously Grey Dawning, but they did go quick. And it was significant that the 3rd furlong in this race was actually the fastest furlong they ran. Appleway kept pestering Broadway Boy, got in front as they got to the last fence on the first circuit to take control of the race, but straight away then the Changing Man keeps the tempo up and they face down the side in Warwick. She jumped well enough, Appleway, but she always looked to be going as fast as she was able. So did Broadway Boy and the Changing Man, and the one who travelled best was Grey Dawning in behind. And from a long way out you're thinking, Harry, take your time, these are going to trot in front of you. And eventually he comes to the 4th to second last. Broadway Boy tried to get down Appleway's inner from the 4th last to the 3rd last, hadn't the pace to get there, and Grey Dawning absolutely sluiced in. I'd say it was a good performance from him. He was quite deliberate in the last 2 fences when the race was over, yet he still managed to maintain a good pace to the line. But it was a race that was run a little bit back to front. They went very hard early, and it set up for Grey Dawning, who didn't get involved, and particularly from the winning post away from the stands. That's where Grey Dawning dropped off.
Yes.
The others kept the tempo up there, and they paid for it later on.
Yes, that's when the changing man moved up, didn't he?
It kept it. And even if you look at the sectionals of it, they were very. It's running at a high tempo.
What do you make of Grey Dawning running down his fences slightly over the last 2 to the left?
I think the race was over and Harry Skelton was just letting him pop away. He'd been straight up to that. I didn't notice him doing that in the past, so I wouldn't be too worried about that, to be honest with you.
I've seen 2 different arguments as to what should be the ideal target at Cheltenham for Grey Dawning. One is the Turners over shorter, and the other with the Brown Advisory. I am definitely in the latter camp. He looks like a strong stayer and wanting 3 miles to me.
Oh, I'd agree. Oh, big time. I wouldn't be... Me personally, I'd be 3-1 all day.
OK. There was some talk about the Scilly Isles immediately after the race. That was from assistant trainer Tom Messenger. Be interested to see if that's where he goes. That's shaping up to be quite a strong addition. Apple away, what would you do with her?
I think she'd be a good mare in time. She just looked like she was always going as fast as she was able. And look, the experience will do her no harm. She improved from Haydock to Leicester. She's probably improved from Leicester to there, so she's still going in the right direction. She's a good mare. I think with more experience, she could be a player at Aintree as well. I mean, she could, and she was obviously very good there last year. So yeah, something like that might suit her. And Broadway Boy, Willie Twiston-Davis was thinking about the Brown Advisory. Does that suggest that it should be more like the National Hunt Chase? No, it was always going to be hard for Broadway Boy. Huge performance in the handicap the last time. In his only 5 rising, not to rising 6, he's had a long season already. OK. And I was thinking about the Ultima for the changing man potentially. That Tizard's Collins did something similar with Oscar Elite, ran him in the Ultima as a novice. He ran really well. He did. They could switch back to hurdles there because he's still a maiden over fences. Yeah, they could. He'd have to improve a bit though. OK, let's move to the Towton. This is run at Wetherby on the same day. Now, over 5 furlongs shorter than it used to be and about 3 weeks sooner. Yeah, and the horse in front, Trelawn, was very, I suppose, green in front. Was always backing off under David Bass quite high early and out to his left. Went to run off the stand, off the bend here past the home, past the stands even. Obviously going very, very right. I said left a minute ago. It's obviously right. He just wants company and wants a lead. I don't even think it was directional for him, but he was just, David was trying to make a stamina contest out of this, but Trelawn wasn't the right horse to be sending in front. Now, Gavin Sheehan has realised it, and he's off over on the inside of the track, and Colonel Harry, who came home really well at Sandown, because you can see there with Trelawn, he's quite straight on the take-off side, and when he lands, he's off to his right. He's still hanging to his right here, but when Colonel Harry comes to him, he doesn't end up on the hurdle track like a horse that wants to go the other way. He does straighten up and run after Colonel Harry when Colonel Harry joins him. Both make a mistake at the second last, but Trelawn had just given away too much and did too much wrong. I was slightly underwhelmed by Colonel Harry. I thought the way he came home at Sandown, he'd be a bit more impressive here than he was. That's what I felt about it, because with a horse doing what Trelawn was doing and Colonel Harry being completely straightforward, I thought he'd just put that race to bed much more easily than he did. So did I. I thought he came home really well at Sandown. I was slightly underwhelmed by him, and you can even see Trelawn there heading off to his left in behind Colonel Harry on the run to the line. He's just not a front runner. It's not the first time he's done that, though. Doesn't he need some headgear? I mean, I don't know whether it's just as simple as needing a lead. Go up and trip, get a lead. Definitely go up and trip. He has got ability, and that was franking the form of Ginny's Destiny and Grey Dawning from Cheltenham earlier in the season as well. Exactly. Yeah. We've spoken about Spillane's Tower already. Let's take a look at him, shall we? Downing, Blood Destiny. He was very authoritative in the end. He was. Blood Destiny booked out, Imagine, right behind him. Down the inside, you had the mare Silent Approach, Monbeg Park in the yellow and white and Paddy's Passion at the back. Blood Destiny possibly raced a bit keen in front. Not to the extent that you'd be thinking he was overly keen. I didn't think he was anyway. Monbeg Park, not certain. He really loves jumping fences. He's quite high, but you can see how Blood Destiny does attack his fences, both at the 7th and 8th. He's very quick, and he has Imagine on a stretch. Now when they jumped the last ditch, Danny Mullins obviously felt he was going all right, because he has a look to see what's happening behind him. To me, that always signals that the jockey thinks he might have those in front of him covered. 4th last, you're thinking Spillane's Tower and the white cap is booked for 4th. 3rd last away, Blood Destiny jumps it. You're thinking, how far is he going to win? But when they get to the 2nd last, he doesn't go any quicker, Blood Destiny, and Spillane's Tower starts to rev up and fly home. I think the mare's run really well, Silent Approach. Imagine hasn't run his race. and he faded completely out of the shot. But the winner was impressive. He had a mark of 137 coming here. I suppose if you put it even into more context, I'd say Blood Destiny definitely is as disappointed big time. He'd be hoping, getting the weight he was getting from Spillane's Tower, that he'd run to a mark a bit more than 137.
That shot's quite a good one because it shows the difference in physique between the winner and the second. I mean, Spillane's Tower is a really big, scopy horse, kind of horse I love. Yeah. Blood Destiny is a much racier, smaller model, isn't he? He
is much racier, smaller model. Look, the obvious thing is to go back and trip at Blood Destiny, but when you go back and trip, you're also running into some decent horses. It's just not just as easy as going down and trip.
Is he overrated, do you think?
Possibly. He has to go and deliver.
You mentioned Imagine. There's a few of Gordon Elliott's key horses that seemed to underperform last weekend. Are we thinking that there might be
He said the same himself, no excuses for it. In an interview with Kevin on Monday after he trained, after Slán Gallaív won the maiden hurdle.
I'm glad you said that.
Slán Gallaív Gallaír, sorry.
Well, obviously.
That a couple of his had run below par, even no excuses for it, but look, that just happens, peaks and troughs.
I loved how Spillane's Tower put that race to bed.
So did I.
You know, just turning into the straight, you're suddenly going, hello.
Yeah, the one in green is coming.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'd say he's a horse with a big future, and you know, best of luck to Jimmy Mangan with him.
Yeah, and a medium to long-term project, which again, I like. I don't like horses' careers in fast forward.
No.
Right.
But racing isn't fast forward these days.
Can be. That's life, isn't it?
Unfortunately.
It really is.
At least there's some people who are willing to slow down.
For this hour, certainly. This is where we bemoan such stuff. Let's whinge on about Nace, rescheduled last Friday, shall we? And the disappointment of Mr. Policeman.
Yeah, he proved he's not a two-miler, so Blood Destiny might be, but Mr. Policeman most definitely isn't. Jumped out with Calixios on his right, as luck would have it, in behind, and Saffarur was Gordon Elliott's runner here. To me, Calixios was always the one that was going easiest. Mr. Policeman jumped quite high. Even at the ditch across from the stands, you can see what Mr. Policeman loses in the air. And again, at the fourth last fence, he's just not a two-miler, Mr. Policeman. And here at the third last, I'm going to show you on a graph, he lost a huge amount there jumping. Calixios was loving it. Ears pricked, always taking Rachel Blackmore, attacking his fences. And he looked, I suppose, a little bit like the Calixios of old. Mr. Policeman was flat to the boards turning in. Paul didn't get overly serious with him from the home turn to the second last, but to me, he just looked like a horse that was in the wrong race. He was going too slow. He runs on, but I really did like what Calixios did. I loved his attitude. He was enjoying himself. He attacked his fences. His jumping was rock solid. And I thought it was a good step back in the right direction for Calixios, who obviously didn't stay 3 miles in his last start.
No, and Rachel Blackmore said afterwards as well that he jumped straighter than he had done on his debut at Limerick. Let's have a look at Mr. Policeman versus Calixios in numbers. Yeah,
and that just shows you, look, he lost the top of the screen, 0.24 lengths to the par. Calixios made 7.22, but you can see number 8 there, that's the third last fence where he lost a lot of ground. Calixios really attacked the second last, and you can see where his shoots up. That's to do with speed too. He was able to quicken, and he was going much faster than Mr. Policeman was, and that got him that huge gain.
I take the point about Mr. Policeman going up in trip because he saw out the race really strongly, but it was interesting just watching him losing ground in the air successively against one of the opposition after another. Is his jumping even slick enough for 2.5?
That's a question. Is he even a chaser? Should he be going back over hurdles? That's a debate. I'm sure it's in the mixing pot.
And the winner, dominating, slightly reminiscent of the Triumph Hurdle success, and controlling the race in that way. Does that make him an Arkle candidate, or is that flying a bit high?
I'd say he'll run in the Arkle. I don't know if he'll run in the DRF Arkle, but I could see him running in the Cheltenham Arkle, yeah, definitely. And
being a player?
What's the front runner in the Arkle? There's no, like a Dysart Dynamo or Champagne Fever or loads of, there's loads of horses that rock along in an Arkle. Probably not one in this year's Arkle. I know Marine National made it in Leopardstown, but he didn't make it in the Supreme. I could see him being the front runner in the Arkle. I'd probably be slightly surprised if he was still in front, going to the winning post though. OK, well, he's made himself a potential player for the race nonetheless. That's the Novice Chasers. So finally, it's the juveniles. At last, I hear you cry. To bring us... I can hear myself crying too.
but I'm going to ignore that. To bring us up to date, let's have a look at what's happened in the last 7 days in this division. We're going to start with High Wind winning at Punchestown on Monday. Yeah,
Sean O'Keefe rode on Paul Townham was suspended, booked out handy down to the first. Wasn't a really deep race or anything. Had a look and jammed on a little bit at it and was a little bit keen in behind. Got settled going to the second hurdle into third place, where again he makes another mistake. That's 2 jumps, 2 small mistakes. Gets to the fourth hurdle, bang, hits that one as well, lands out on his head. Round to the second last, he's starting to get a bit closer, up in the air and down on his nose. Now does get himself out of that pocket and quickens really well then going to the last hurdle when Sean grabs a hold of him and sends him forward. He was impressive how quickly he puts the race to bed, the way he had jumped and the way he had travelled. He's kind of doing everything wrong and still winning the race. Quickens to the last hurdle, jams on at the last hurdle, has another look at it, lands out on his head again, and gives the momentum to all those behind him. Yet in a matter of strides he's able to pick up and shoot away to win. I'd say ability wise that was really impressive, but there's a lot to work on.
Yeah, the scale of the error, the fact that he was able to pick up, particularly against a horse as experienced over hurdles as Pigeon House, exposed but experienced. Yeah,
ability wise that was a good performance.
Yeah. So that was his debut for Willie Mullins. He won over 9.5 furlongs on the all-weather when trained by Christopher Head, so keep an eye on High Wind. We had Miss Manzer beating Carrier de Blazes and Nadawi as well. This was at Fairyhouse.
Yeah, and we'll see both, a couple of these again a little bit later from Christmas. Miss Manzer jumped out in front, Nadawi sat behind her, Carrier de Blazes and Trust Your Instinct dropped in at the back, obviously quite keen in the hood. Now they disappeared into the fog here at the fourth hurdle in Fairyhouse and we didn't see too much of them, but when they came back into sight going to the third last, Trust Your Instinct has moved up behind a couple of fancied ones. I thought Paul Townham controlled this race. We saw Jack Kennedy control a few at Fairyhouse earlier in the year. I thought Paul controlled this one. Pings the second last on Miss Manzer, gets a run on Carry the Blazes. Nadawi fades and she's enough done to get home, but I think when you watch the Leopardstown juvenile hurdle from Christmas, it puts Miss Manzer and Carry the Blazes pretty much where they are, and I think that's a reflection of this race. I think they're more Fred Winter horses than they are Triumph horses.
Okay. Interesting. We've also got Kif Du Lait. Paul Nicholls ran a couple of interesting juveniles. This was the impressive Kempton winner.
Yeah, he was impressive. Down to the first. Fine big horse to look at compared to some of the other juveniles we've watched. Absolutely pings the second hurdle, reaches a bit at the third, and then Harry takes him back at the fourth and he gallops into it. But he learned from that, landed half trotting at the back of that hurdle. Third last hurdle, he started to go a bit left and he goes markedly left down the straight. Gets in close and he goes left at the second last, but at the last when Harry gives him a squeeze, he's still very left. Now maybe that was just a drier surface at Kempton that was forced him to go a bit left, but he's an impressive individual to look at. He absolutely bolted in. How deep a race it is, I'm not sure, but when you look at horses you think, wow, that's a horse for the future.
Very much so. Just to briefly talk about the second and third, I thought they shaped pretty well, particularly the second. I loved his head carries, the way he went, pressed on to the line. Whether they've got time to qualify for something for Fred Winter, I'm not sure. Now, Paul Nicholls has been interesting about the winner. He said he's not a Triumph Hurdle horse, and he says that he's going to learn from history, essentially, or he implies that he will, in that he ran Clan-des-Obeaux and Frodon, and they ran mid-division in the Triumph Hurdle. Went on to be top, yeah.
Fourth, yeah. No, look, it is, and he looks a more National Hunt type 4-year-old, doesn't he?
He's a really good-looking chasing type for the future, you would think. And Paul also ran Cabral du Mathan, who won the Chatteris Fen at Huntingdon. Not a very deep edition of that particular race last Friday. That horse would need one more qualifying run for the Boodles Fred Winter, which apparently is the target. Right, we're focusing on the Grade 1s, though. So let's have a look at the JCB Triumph Hurdle betting, through which we can then catch up on the horses that we've already seen earlier in the season. And a number of those horses that you see there will be picked up on in the next few moments, starting with the Antipode's favourite, a possible runner at the Dublin Racing Festival, an entry in the Champion Hurdle, the 4-year-old Burdett Road, who we've mentioned in passing, but this is what he did at Cheltenham. Yeah, and he probably sets the standard as well. Now look, there was a bit of carnage at the first hurdle here. Parish Star goes to run out, but you can see how far back Harry Cobden sets off on Burdett Road. Probably thinking, not so bad when this all happens in front of him at the first, that he was so far back and it didn't overly interfere with him. But I thought he did settle well enough Burdett Road, considering all that went on. That could have really lit him up at the first hurdle, but it didn't. Harry had him good and relaxed on the inside. Now he flattens the third hurdle.
I don't think it's a bad thing. He's not afraid of jumping. You get a lot of flat horses that back off and they're afraid. This fella's not, just gallops out through that. And you're thinking, well, maybe he'll get up. No, he does the same thing at the 5th. Bang out through it again. But it doesn't slow him down. He just takes them on, and if he has to flatten them, he flattens them. The last hurdle, he a bit awkward, but again he's still keen, flies the second last hurdle and shows a really impressive turn of foot to go and win then. Now I know he beat on Braden Fassa, who's gone back to Cheltenham and won, but I'd love the way he quickens up the hill in Cheltenham. And even when you watch this with the speedometers on it and whatever, he quickens all the way up along, and not many horses go faster up the hill in Cheltenham.
No, that's a serious performance. He's a Royal Ascot winner over 10 furlongs and clearly a horse of some quality. As you say, and Braden Fassa has upheld the form, and Milantino might be back on trials day as well for Noel George, and he's a very good looking horse. I think that was a tremendous performance.
So do I, but that's, to me, Burdett Road is the standard setter at the moment.
Yes, yeah, I very much agree with that. So Gino, though, is pretty exciting. Let's have a look at him at Kempton. What did you make of this?
I thought it was good. Obviously quite keen. Nico de Bonville even drops him in down the back. Royal Way was in front. Torneo was the other horse beside Torneo even. But he pulls his way into 3rd place up by the stands, past the winning post. 4th hurdle then. He leaves his hind end in this. He gets in close and drags his hind end out through it. Gets to the 6th hurdle, which is the 3rd last. He pings the flattened hurdle. Most horses could step onto that when it gets knocked in front of them, but he jumped it. Then jams on at the 2nd last and gets quite high, very green. And again at the last hurdle, Nico rides him down. He rides him into it. He puts down when he's in front. I'd say he's quite green. A lot of improving to do, but it was an impressive enough performance. I definitely want to see him again. I think he has racing is going to make him a better horse.
Agreed. He was conceding weight all round for his win at France, which will come up in passing in a few moments' time. But he strikes me as a similar type to Kif Du Lait in that he's a future horse. He's not just a juvenile, is he? I even wonder whether he'll be streetwise enough for a Triumph Hurdle.
Bet he runs.
You think he will?
I think he will, yeah. I think he'll run the Triumph. And where he goes next, who knows? But yeah, I'd have him as a sharper horse than Kif Du Lait. I
was more talking about, I feel like they're horses there are some horses that are kind of at their peak as 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
I don't think he's one of them.
No, I don't think he is either. I think he will improve, but the problem with buying winners out of France is they're not novices.
Yes. So you have to get going with them. This
is their novice year. Yeah. 3 into 4, and next year's an awkward year, whether you go chasing or you stay hurdling. So there's an awkward year for every horse, but when you're buying winners, your hand is forced.
Yes, it's the equivalent of the difficult second album. Let's go to Dublin for the Christmas Festival Leopardstone, shall we? Now, this was a great race, and it was won by Calaconti.
Deep race, yeah. Calaconti on your outside, and Nurburg Ring down the inside. Loads of depth in here. Miss Manzer was in it. Obviously, you had Batman Girac, Carafan, Mighty Bandit, Carry the Blazes. Loads of horses in. Cargeese, Danny Mullins, middle of the shot in the blue cap white spot. She was quite keen. Calaconti, good and brave. Danny Gilligan was up there on the pace. Now, they didn't go mad, and a lot of horses stay in this race for a lot of it. You can see Cargeese again there, quite keen. The yellow cap is Miss Manzer. We've watched her winning, but how close they are together. They slowed right down towards 26, 27 miles an hour in the back straight, and when they get to the 3rd last hurdle, you could throw a blanket over them. Nurburg Ring is right down the inside. Mighty Bandit was the real fancy one in the red of Gordon Elliott's. I think Calaconti was always in control of this race.
Yes.
Was in the right place, crossed to the 2nd last, 1st to last, 6 lengths, 7 lengths maybe, max. The red cap at the back is Batman Girac. He runs on really well. Now, Danny Gilligan, when he gets to the front, didn't commit off the bend. He slowed it down. He forced Danny Mullins up on the outside. That kept Nurburg Ring in the white sleeves in a pocket. He had won at Fairyhouse. He doesn't really ever get out till it's too late. Staying on was Carafon, I think, with Darryl Jacob in the first cap of Simon Munir's. Calaconti steps at the last, but he always does enough. Now, Nurburg Ring does run on. With a clearer run, could he turn it with Calaconti? There wasn't much between them at Fairyhouse. There wasn't a whole lot between them at Leopardstown. And Cargeese, when he settles or she settles, definitely one that will come forward.
Yeah, I think the first 3 are all 3 of them are interesting. Just a quick word for Danny Gilligan. He's having a fine season, isn't he?
Super season.
Galway Plate with Ashtree Meadow and who was the other one? Troy Town, of course, with Cocoa Beach.
Yeah, but very good there from the 2nd last hurdle to the bend. He didn't commit. He didn't open. If he committed, he'd open all the race behind him. He didn't. He sat and kept it tight behind him.
Like you, I felt the horse to take out was Nurburg Ring. I think, assuming, and it doesn't always, that the Triumph Hurdle will be strongly run, I can see him doing better, thriving in that kind of environment.
So can I. And look, you get any track when you're in the position Richie Deegan was in, you just can't put a propeller on your back and lift yourself out of that pocket. The race has to open in front of you, and it didn't. And when it did open, then it was just too late. But that happens in horse racing. Not
his race, surely, for Mighty Bandits, given the expectation that the winning camp had.
And Jack rode him instead of Carla Conti, so obviously he disappointed.
And Batman Girac, potential for the Fred Winter?
Yeah, settled much better at Leopardstown than he had at Fairyhouse, where he capsized turning in. That was ridden to come home by Michael O'Sullivan, and he did, but can often get caught out really trusting horses that are ridden to come home.
Can do, but I suppose he was in the wrong place at the back, wasn't he?
He was, but he was never forced into it. He was ridden to get as close as he could.
Yeah. Tongue tie possibly helped as well, maybe?
Maybe it did.
Stormheart, let's move on to him, shall we? This was pretty impressive for Willie Mullins and Paul Townend.
Yeah, and jumped out really in a decent position on New Year's Eve. Stormheart did, behind or beside Ross O'Sullivan's runner, which was not high wind, storm, whatever it was called, into the third hurdle. They're both up there, and then down the outside comes Katona of Noel Meads. Now Katona jams on at the fifth hurdle right in front of Stormheart, drags him back out of the race. So when they get up to the second last, he still has plenty of running to do. Gina Macaroni goes up on the outside, but a bit like high wind, it's the turn of foot that Stormheart shows. Now he flies down to the last hurdle with Paul Townend, gives it plenty of air and lands running. It was a really good performance when you consider what happened to him in the middle of the race. I'm not saying it was the strongest race. Genie Macaroni was well behind high wind since, and he's going to go to the spring juvenile hurdle, but visually it was impressive to look at.
Have those silks been left in the sun?
No, they're usually the Jigginstown silks are made by O'Brien's, and I think they could be an Allerton set.
Right, okay. I thought...
Different brand.
I see.
Like Nike or Adidas.
I thought Willie had put
them on the boil wash. There are brands in racing too. Willie put them on boil wash. Wonder does Willie know where the washing machine is?
Yeah, just my theory. Let's take a look at Bunting, shall we? He's also trained by Willie Mullins.
Yeah, he won at Limerick at Christmas. Again, not sure it was the strongest maiden hurdle in the world. Sean O'Keefe rode this fella. Bit keen early, but he did settle well, real testing ground. Jumped well on the hole. Was always going really easily. Sean was at pains to keep him behind the one in front. Even when those behind were trying to push him forward, Sean didn't commit him. I thought he quickened nicely down to the second last when he eased clear. Jumped it okay. Slightly right at the last, and he's gone and won well. Again, you're looking at him like High Wind, like Stormheart, like Bunting. There's probably not a massive amount between them. They've all won maidens, and you're going to find out more about them in the spring juvenile hurdle, which is why I'd left all these juveniles until after the DRF.
Yes, but you need to know the characters in order to be able to understand the play properly, don't you?
Maybe.
I think that was a win. I really liked that performance. There was something about it. Sean O'Keefe, it took him ages to pull the horse up. He was green and didn't really know what he was doing, and yet he still won that really nicely. I found that quite exciting.
Yeah, so did I. And if you looked at those different maidens of Willies that you saw winning, Ethical Diamond was the one that was working better than any of them, and he bombed out. So, look, homework.
Well, we can see him bombing out right now behind Interlotto, Lucy Wang and Mordor. There's the one that fought this maiden hurdle out over Christmas.
Yeah, huge field. Leopardstown. Interlotto was dropped in down the inside. Larkin the Park is the horse in the Mulrine colours with the red cap. Interlotto a bit high at the second hurdle, finds himself back in the pack. Ethical Diamond, Paul Townend is in about fourth there, steps to that fourth place, and you can see where Interlotto was dropped right back in the field. Now this closes up again going to the second last. There was an extra hurdle in the back straight in Leopardstown. Interlotto, you're thinking there he's quite green, he's a lot of running to do, but he stays really strongly. Darryl Jacob, a lot of horses in front of him at the second last, does get a run through off the home turn, gets him into a challenging position, quickens up. Not sure he quickens up, that's probably saying a bit much. Lucky Wing and Mordor are the two horses in front of him as he goes to the last, but he does prick his ears, jumps this well and stays really well. And I suppose traditionally he would want Triumph horses to stay, but I'd imagine he'd be going to the Dublin Racing Festival and be pitched in against all those other horses we've watched, and we'll know a lot more about them.
That seems to be the suggestion from Joseph O'Brien, who also trained him on the flat. He achieved a rating of 87, but had a little bit of a setback and ended up having to be put away and gelded in June. I like that performance, but he did miss some scrimmaging on the inside. On reflection, though, I'm not certain how significant that actually was in the end. No,
neither did I. I liked how much he improved through the race. He was quite high, his jumping got better. He came from an unlikely position. After starting in a good position, he got himself into an ordinary one, and he still got him one.
Lucy Wang, 150 to 1 second. There was no fluke about it, as far as I could see.
I wouldn't have thought so either.
And Mordor, who used to be with David Simcock on the flat?
He looks like more of a handicap type, probably. But there's a couple of horses disappointed. Now, that was the second, 27th. There was plenty of rain falling, I'd say, into Lawlor liked soft ground.
And Pigeon House and Lark in the Morning, who we saw in that first race behind High Wind, they were further back in that race also, so all that racing interwoven. We also had the Grade 2 finale juvenile hurdle at Chepstow. That has been downgraded from a Grade 1 as of this season. It was won by a wide margin by Gary Moore's Salva.
They were absolutely hosed up. Caelan Quinn rode him. It was a really good performance. The second was Balboa. Harsh was back and fourth, who had been third to Mighty Bandit at Cork. Good performance, just finale winners. How many of them keep going?
Well, Gary Moore made the point that he felt that his horse enjoyed the conditions and the others probably didn't, and I think you can see that. I mean, he pressed on a long way out and made it a real test of stamina, and Harsh was just legless by the end, wasn't
trotting. But it was a good performance, really good performance was that.
It was.
Salvatore even.
Again, Gary Moore thinking he might miss the Triumph, but he won that 2 years ago with Porticello, of course. He was potentially thinking about Aintree or even putting the horse away. Right, now, a correspondent has been in touch, wanting to know something specifically from you. Let's have a look. Tam Lindsay, there you are. Can I ask you about Salvatore Mundy? What's going on with him?
Second to Sergino and Autoi, wasn't he? He's in full work. I saw him working, what day is today? Thursday, Tuesday. Yeah, he looked a nice horse. I'd imagine he'll run somewhere in the spring.
That he's in the Spring Juvenile Hurdle at the Dublin Racing Festival, isn't he? And there's a couple of others that are also interesting in that kind of regard at Willis. Majborough being one, who's owned by JP McManus and won at Auteuil in April, and Amsterdam, who won both of his starts in the autumn for Arnaud Chalet.
Yeah, one at Bordeaux and Compiègne, Bordeaux even and Compiègne. Amsterdam, he's a nice horse. Majborough's a gorgeous horse to look at. Fine big horse, more a bit like Sergino or Caliph de Burley, huge horse to look at, really impressive individual, but they're all at full training. I imagine if they were entered in that last week, the plan is to run them. Well,
I mean, you know, that looks like a fantastic race on paper, and you've just made the point or implied that Willie Mullins will run his horses at the Dublin Racing Festival against each other. Thank goodness he does, because otherwise you'd end up with small fields. But that, you know, they're there to take each other on. They certainly were last season.
There are, but there's great value in that anti-post market looking at it.
Go on. What were you thinking about?
Nurburg Ring is a good price.
Let's pop that back up. I suspect. I wonder whether Nurburg Ring is going straight to Cheltenham. I was just wondering. So we've moved on to the Boodles.
Batman, Jurac, High Wind.
That's the Boodles.
Can't imagine High Wind will have a mark to win a Boodles, but
no.
Yeah, interesting.
But back to the juvenile. I know I'd agree with you that Nurburg Ring would be a good price, but I wonder whether he's actually going to run there.
Possibly. McCann Fitzgerald, new sponsor as well, so good to see new sponsors coming into the sport.
Very much so. We're going to go back to the Boodles to see if there's anything that did take your fancy. No?
No.
It was always a long shot. And that particular long shot, didn't come in.
And you watched the last two champion chases. Like, we'd looked at them beforehand, you're thinking, well, what will win? These are going to be great races. By the water jump, you only wanted to be on Ennergamine in the last 2 years. Yeah. That's how quickly this race...
Oh, it sorts itself out in the first mile, really, doesn't it?
Good luck.
Yeah.
At halfway, this race, the cream has come to the top, and the ones you don't want to be on are sticking out like sore thumbs.
So novice hurdlers now, and some really interesting stuff that shook up the anti-post markets for the Cheltenham Festival. I'm going to start with the race that I felt was the strongest, deepest novice hurdle of the season so far, the Lawlors at Naas, which was rescheduled to last Friday, and won by Readin Tommy Wrong. I think everybody had been Readin Tommy Wrong, hadn't they?
Yeah, it had. Looked, it booked out 6 of them in line down to the first. Shepard Asoi on the inside. He jams on at the second. Now, Lecky Watson had gone back beside Readin Tommy Wrong on the way to the second hurdle, but Shepard jams on here. Allows the Atlantique to get in front. Firefox is sat behind him. Shepard Asoi all bar lies down at the third hurdle. Readin Tommy Wrong goes by him. Paul Townend then picks it up on the Atlantique. Readin Tommy Wrong, he was a bit deliberate, a bit high at times. They kept up a consistent gallop throughout this race. Fourth last Firefox jumped up the Atlantique. Third last Atlantique jumps away from Firefox, and Readin Tommy Wrong was definitely as deliberate as anything in the race. He definitely put down and popped all the way, which makes his performance a little bit more impressive. Lecky Watson had raced too freely when he got light on the outside. Shepard of Soy, actually, I couldn't believe he was that close considering the way he jumped early. On Tubber, disappointed. Down to the last hurdle, he did Atlantique. To me, looked like he was there to be shot at, and Readin Tommy Wrong came at him and out-battles him. Now, that's the third time he did Atlantique. It's had to get down and dirty, and it's the third time he's lost. Readin Tommy Wrong out-battles him here. But I do think Firefox in the red cap probably underperformed. I'm not sure, when you go through a bumper form, I'm not sure he's run up to scratch, but the winner has kept going really well, but to me looked like a horse that would be going up in trip rather than even staying at that trip.
Well, it's interesting you should say that. We're going to have a look at each of these horses in isolation, using your thoughts as well, because you've been talking a lot about the Lawlors of Naas, as we asked you to. Thank you very much. Andrew Shepard was getting in touch with us, and he was talking about Readin Tommy Wrong. He says, I'm shocked they're not going 3 miles with him. He hit the line very hard and he looks like he'll improve for the step up and trip. If we have a look at the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle betting, I tend to agree with Andrew here. You've mentioned the deliberate jumping. I think that that's going to be, and it was a strongly run race. It's going to be helped, isn't it?
Yeah, even the way he races, he goes along behind the bridle. He's an ideal candidate for staying races. That's personally what I think. What connections decide, who knows?
Let's move on to Keith Hawkins and what he thinks about the runner-up Atlantique, shall we? And now, for background, Keith the Camel here is a good friend of Tony Bloom's, who owns Atlantique. And this is what he thinks. They're both betting men, so they'll see things, you know, straightforwardly. But this is his view about Atlantique. He'd hoped he was a stare in the mating, but he was ridden aggressively and curled up. He's pointed out that it's 3 times now over the page that he's traded at 1.1 or shorter in running. If you look at his run in France, it's a similar story. And so he's quite concerned about whether Atlantique is, to put it in betting terms, soft in the finish.
Yeah, but I suppose if he's been the one to be shot at 3 times, isn't he? I can't remember the other day. I think he was. The horses have always come at him. I wonder if it's just a matter of changing tactics with him and make him the one going at. Now this time he did go at Firefox, of course, and Firefox got back to beat him at Fairyhouse. Patrick obviously tried that, so that's not going to work. Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't mind owning a couple of soft ones like him, though.
Oh, I mean, he's obviously got a lot of talent. That's why he's generated so much debate, and people have different views about what went on and what trip he wants. What do you think he needs, Atlantique?
Jump well enough. Don't know. I hadn't thought too much about it, actually.
What are you doing sitting here?
Don't know.
Anyway, go on, you were going to say.
What would you do with him? I couldn't see going back down and tripping. He doesn't strike me as fast enough. Maybe you would. I don't know. He's a bit of a head scratcher, isn't he?
I think so. Firefox, though...
Didn't perform, didn't turn up.
Is this Gordon Elliott's time of year?
Well, it can't be all year round. So everyone's going to have a quiet spell. And probably round now is usually probably a quiet spell for Gordon. I mean, his horse is in such good form all the way to Christmas that there's always going to be a lull. Maybe that is around now.
Let's take a look at Mark's view as well. He sent us a tweet as well, which was to talk about the third, and that was Lecky Watson. Willie was a little bit critical that he didn't get enough cover beforehand. Yeah,
he got wide in the home straight and ran a big keen. It's hard to know. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably book him out and let him gallop along.
Good enough for the Albert Bartlett?
Yeah, I'd say he is.
Okay.
That's ultimately, you're asking about Atlantique. That's what I do. I would just swap tactics with the two of them. I'd book Lecky Watson out and drop Atlantique.
Right, okay. All right.
Try something.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to try something, haven't you? Now, you were on duty for us at Naas on Friday, and I was intrigued by this question that you asked Rachel Blackmore before she rode Anne to Bar. This is what you asked her.
If you were trying to measure him or trying to gauge him, where would you put him in terms of Slade Steel?
Yeah, they were very hard to separate all the way along. They possibly still are. So, yeah, I won't be nailing my colours to either of them yet.
Now, you know that we're both big Slade Steel fans. Should we take that literally?
I knew she wasn't going to answer.
But should we take that literally?
No, no way.
You were getting from her body language that they think Slade Steel is better.
I was laughing at her, thinking she has to slay Slade Steel, or I put her in a position where she'd have to, and she didn't. And I was just laughing. I was thinking, yeah, don't get off the fence anyway.
Because
clever.
If they are about the same, then we're in trouble, aren't we, with Stade Steel? Okay.
Jockeys.
Right, good. Okay. I was hoping that was the case. I just thought I'd press and find out. And Shepard to Solo, my goodness. I mean, I thought he couldn't jump worse than
school in shed for him.
Just tripped over them again, didn't he? Just like, oh my God, a hurdle.
I have to leave the ground.
I'd rather not, thank you very much. Right, let's have a look at the Moscow Flyer. This was won by Mystical Power, who was due to run in the original Orders of Mason, went here and took on Jigoro. Yeah,
Jigoro, Lambron and James's Gate on the outside, sat in behind. Was probably the slowest of them all at the first, bit keen to the second, but this small mistake actually gave him a chance to settle. He switched off well, wasn't run at an overly quick pace this race. They were only doing, you know, sort of 27, 28 miles an hour early in the race. Paul does quicken it up into the back straight. Lambron put down at the first hurdle in the back straight. Jigoro jumped up beside him. Third last hurdle, James's Gate slightly out to his left, but Mark was confident enough to stay in the pocket on Mystical Power, and he does show a good turn of foot off the home turn where they get up to 34, nearly 35 miles an hour. I thought he quickened well to put the race to bed, Lydia. I'm not so sure James's Gate and Lambron brought their A game. I think Jigoro did though, and I think that Mystical Power is a horse that's improving the whole time. He'll have to jump a little bit better, but it's only his second start over hurdles, and I imagine he will. Time's not brilliant, is it? He doesn't really sort of stand up in that way. You're looking at your eyes and the fact that he seems to be learning on the job. Yeah, and the fact that he keeps quickening, and even when he gets to the last hurdle, he slows right down to jump it, but he quickens again on landing. He lands at 26 miles an hour. He's up over 31 by the time he gets to the winning post, so he had plenty in the tank. How about his demeanour? He was quite keen at the post, keen in the early part of the race. Would he be the kind of horse who might boil over prior to a Supreme? No, his dam was keen enough too. She was too keen to win a stairs, so she was keen, always a bit keen. And I can't really tell you about Galileo, but Andy Power was a bit joy. There's going to be inevitable comparisons between Mystical Power and his mum. Let's take a look at them. How would you compare them physically? So there's nothing to compare about them, is there? She's a much bigger head, longer neck. She was huge presence. He's smaller, a bit stubbier. She's chestnut, he's bay, brown, bay. Profile-wise, in terms of how they're learning? One is male, one is female. I don't know. I meant how they were learning in terms of, you know, what. Yeah, sure, maybe he's. Yeah, I suppose she progressed all through her career, and I'd say he's progressed a long way from his win in Ballinrobe. Okay. I mentioned this has shaken up the markets, anti-post, for the Cheltenham Festival. We'll start with the Sky Bet Supreme, shall we? Mystical Power was propelled to the front of the market, but Jericho de Ropponais is also owned by JP McManus. Has got a strong hand in this kind of race. Yeah, so were my 10 to yours and jet ski. And what was the horse? Captain CB and Binocular. No, I'm thinking about Edward O'Grady's horse. No flies on him. He could be. He's going to the DRF. JP wouldn't be against running a couple in the Supreme. Absolutely. And then we have what is now known as the Baring Bingham Novices Hurdle. That is the identifier of this race. It used to be sponsored by Ballymore, but their sponsorship has come to an end. So that's what we're calling it for now until a new sponsor is found. Yeah. Or, I mean, think Slade Steel is valued at 14s. Pardon, say that again? I still think Slade Steel is valued at 14s. You going to do that? Yep. Is that a bet? Yeah, he won't be out of the tree. I like these spontaneous bets. Gidley Park was in that as well. He was an interesting winner at Newbury prior to Christmas for Harry Fry. What did you make for him? Yeah, I thought he kept going well. He was a short price favourite. Jumped well, stayed well, and yeah, he won. Other than that, now I didn't have a huge amount to think about it, to say the truth. OK, well, let's look at Tully Hill now, shall we? Because this horse won at Naas last Friday. What did you make of this? Better than Punchestown, but still not brilliant. Paul rode him into the first hurdle, he jumped it better, reaches at the second, but he didn't look like he was outside the wings of it or anything, and it's still just about going to get there. Stutters into the third hurdle, jams on, fourth hurdle he's a bit better. It really was a mixed bag with him. When he gets to he was good at that one. Gets the second last, he's quite good. Quickens up, I suppose, to go and beat Lightkeeper of Gordon Elliott's. The faster he was going, maybe the better he jumped, but he's a horse that's going to need more and more practice. He is. I wonder whether the return to left-handed was of help, because he won his point left-handed, didn't he? And he seemed to enjoy going right-hand last time. Probably go to Leopardstown next, but yeah, I think he has to. He's definitely one that's going to need more practice. Some promise staying on to third from Captain Guinness's sister. Yeah. Stonyford Lady, is it? Stonyford Lady. I see Justin O'Hanlon and put her up as well as one was caught his eye. Yeah. Okay.
I want to just give a mention to Doyen Dubar, who was a winner at Kelso over the weekend, because it looks like the North have got a decent hurdler in this horse, if he can stay sound.
Yeah, obviously he's an 8-year-old. He's been hard to train. Pauline Robson trains him. Craig Nichol rode him. Pretty much made all. Went to go gallop up by the winning post. He was 5 or 6 in front. Jumped the 4th hurdle quite big. Gets very high at it. You know, be knocking him for it, lands a little bit in his nose, gets to the second last fence, he's doing a hurdle even, he's doing a half speed and he pops it and he quickens away and wins by a considerable distance. Now the last was bypassed, testing ground at Kelso, but he was going to go gallop when he got to this last hurdle, which should have been the second last, and he stretched away and won by a country mile. Again, he has to say sound.
Yes.
At least he was sound last week.
Yeah, and he's now strung a few races together in a row, whereas before they were punctuated by quite long absences, 8 years of age, and quite a talent for Pauline Robson. So we're going to end with thoughts on the intermediate chasers, the ones that we know very well and have been lighting up our enjoyment for the past few seasons, and it kind of revolves around the Ryanair, but we'll get to that in a moment. First of all, we need to talk about the Silverniaco Conti from last Saturday, which was actually a rather strong contest. It
was good race to watch. Pick Dory, Banbridge, Edwardstone, Janadill, and not long till May on the outside. Went a decent enough gallop. Edwardstone settled reasonably well early in the race, down over the first 3 or 4 fences. Tom Cannon even had him in a good spot. He was dropped in last. Janadill unfortunately started to jump a bit slower and dropped back to Edwardstone, which didn't really suit Tom Cannon, and it's only off the home turn to the 5th fence that he gets keen when he got competitive. Now Tom has him parked on the inside with a good hold of him. Banbridge and Pick Dory were jumping well in front. Last fence on the first circuit, Edwardstone lets fly out of Tom Cannon's hands, and that nicks a quarter of an inch of rain off Tom Cannon, and when they head into the bend past the stands, he starts to go with him. Tom is forced to change his hands, which unfortunately sets Edwardstone alight. Just here now, that's a signal on most horses to go faster, but when your hands get too far back from the bit, ultimately you're forced to change them, and then it becomes a battle that Tom Cannon loses, and Edwardstone charges with him then from crossing the all-weather track down over the first, what would be the first in the 3-mile chase track in Kempton, and the ditch, and to me he pulls himself out of the race at this point. Pick Dory and Banbridge are in front of him. Watch him go into this ditch now. Edwardstone, he's running with Tom Cannon and he just launches out of his hands like he had done in the Desert Awkward one time as well. When he should have put in there, he lets fly. Janadill was struggling. Banbridge was always trying to push Pick Dory. JJ Slevin was conscious of not letting Harry Cobden dictate this, and he was a bit slower at times, Banbridge, than Pick Dory, or to the eye he looked to be. But when it mattered, Banbridge's jumping came to the fore. Rubbed the 3rd last, but it cost him very little. Rubs the 2nd last, again it cost him very little. But when Pick Dory puts down at the last, he does lose some momentum, and you can see on landing how quickly that gap appears. And Banbridge goes and wins, and what was his first start for a long time, and put himself firmly into the Ryanair picture.
Very much so. Let's have a look at the Ryanair betting, shall we, as a result. He's now second favourite at 5-1. Some ground dependency. He was pulled out because of deep ground before, and he does seem to be at his best on a soundish surface, Banbridge.
He does, but he is at Cheltenham. He won a Martin Pipe. He's won there in November. He just doesn't want testing ground, and he won't run on testing ground.
Is that the end of the 2.5-mile project over fences for Edwardstone, or do you think they could pursue it for the reasons that you've just explained?
Possibly.
Surely he goes for the Champion Chase.
I would. I think I'd run him in the Champion Chase.
He's a big price and a danger there. He's a lurker. You wouldn't completely dismiss him, even without El Fabiolo.
I think he could finish 3rd. I think he could finish 3rd, and if something happened to one or the other two, he might nick 2nd. I think he'd be a surprise winner.
Okay, right. Now, we were talking about how the Ryanair were all changed after the Silverniaco Conti. There could be a real shake-up as a result of this Sunday at Thurles, provided it goes ahead. We're more hopeful of that than elsewhere. Look at that lineup. Envoy Alain missed the Saddles Chase to go here. Appreciate It and Capadano, who ran so well in it, are there. But also Allaho, who underwhelmed you and me when 3rd in the King George, but not other people.
Yeah, not other people. Look, it will be a really good race in the Kinloch Bray on Sunday. Be interesting to see tomorrow morning which one Paul Townend rides. Will he stick with Allaho? Will he get off and ride Appreciate It?
Well, that would be a huge tell, wouldn't it?
It would, but it'll be interesting to see which one he rides. I think one ran, I don't know, I think one, probably neither of them young, but it'll be interesting to see what he does.
We asked you who would be favourite for the Ryanair on Sunday night after the Horse and Jockey Hotel Chase had been run. Who do you think they went for?
Banbridge.
Nope, they're still believers. Allaho, 45% ahead of Banbridge, who have got has got his following as well. And Envoy Alain, one of your 2 anti-post tips in the Ryanair. He is amongst the something else at 10%, and Appreciate is your other one at 12%.
Oh, well. Little faith, haven't they?
Yeah,
Can't say I blame them now either.
I think there could be a real reshuffling there. Now, are you expecting Ascot to be off on Saturday?
Yep.
Yeah, so am I. And that means that we're not going to see Al Fabiolo and John. But I suppose, has it been called off early enough for the possibility of El Fabiolo travelling to Cheltenham if it's rescheduled there?
Hopefully they won't have put him on the boat before it's called off. But yeah, there's a possibility then.
Yeah, because the point was that he wouldn't travel over twice like NLM did to Ascot and to Cheltenham, but just Cheltenham might work. Right, OK, thank you very much for that gallop through the recent action. And if you need more, you can go to the website, racingtv.com/road to Cheltenham. And make sure you join us next Thursday at 10 a.m, a special show live from Gorham Park with a special guest as well. Also at the usual time of 9 o'clock. See you then.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.